Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. I am bringing back the coffee chats, and I wanted to kick them off again with kind of like a very personal experience and message that I hope helps you guys. And I want to deliver a ton of value in this without you having to do anything. I want you to take whatever time that you take in this live and realize that for once there's not more that you have to do. I want this to be a reminder that you literally have everything in you. And this is going to be a conversation around awareness, because awareness is so powerful, especially for women and especially for mamas. And I'm going to talk about what I mean by all that. But again, my goal is for any of you who stick around for this live, I'm going to wave, that you leave here with a reminder to do less. We are so overdoing as women, and this is going to be a conversation around comparison, and this is going to be a conversation around, kind of like the back to school, and especially for any mamas where I think this can be a time where it can be really easy to compare what everyone else is doing as far as after schools, or what everyone else is doing as far as screen time, or what everyone else is doing as far as anything, fill in the blank. And for this to be a reminder in those moments to create an awareness, and instead of looking outside of us for the answers, to go within. And I know this might kind of come off at first as sounding like a little woo-woo, but listen, we are literally living and swimming in the age of over-information. And I don't know, I get super overwhelmed. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but there is so much outside of us, so much noise telling us what to do and how to do it in the age of YouTube and podcasts and books. I love all these things. This is where we can gather data and resources. But I think what this really needs to come down to, especially for women and especially moms, because there's just so much going on as it is, as the reminder to go internal and to continuously ask, what about this works for me or doesn't work for me? Because as women, we are naturally intuitive. And sorry, I keep having to move this a little bit because the connection is blowing out. We are naturally intuitive, and it's time for us to get back to what is happening here. Whatever, to get back to the age of wisdom, and this is how we do it. And so this morning I read this really cool quote in this month's book, and I talk about this a lot in my communities. Let me see if I can find it. Hilarious. Simply, awareness is the greatest alchemy there is. And that can sound so subtle, but it's so powerful, because when we can create an awareness, and I'm going to go into this in like real life situation kind of stuff I experienced in Montana, staying with my girly friends. When we can create an awareness, what that does is it creates a pause in our life. It creates a pause in our decision-making process. And instead of just reacting and taking the path that we always used to take, which is usually based on other people's stories, it's usually based on other people's voices, it's usually based on what we think we should do or we're supposed to do instead of what feels right in our heart. So when we can create a pause and awareness in any decision, and we make over 30,000 of them every single day, we create a choice for ourselves. And the one biggest thing we can do in that pause, and again, this is what I teach in my communities, this is what I teach in my resources, but I want to give you guys value on this coffee chat, is to simply pause and ask in as many decisions as you can today, what do I want? What works for me? So literally hit this with the low-hanging fruit. This is so powerful. Hit this with the low-hanging fruit. It's lunchtime. What do you normally have for lunch today? What is everyone else around you having for lunch today? Pause and ask, what do I want? And wait for that answer and lean in. I know that sounds silly, but using this awareness in small, multiple, consistent opportunities throughout our day is what helps strengthen that voice. What helps strengthen our knowing of what works for us. And it helps us make choices out of our desire and our wants rather than our shoulds. You think about, as a woman, as a mom, it can be so easy to not even know what we want anymore because we're constantly just reacting to someone else's wants and needs. We haven't been asked in a long time, or we haven't had the ability to make that decision in a long time. And so when this happens, we get really disconnected from our voice. We get really disconnected from our source. And that's when we can start just following the path of least resistance, which isn't necessarily the one that works for us. So I was recently in Montana staying with my girlfriend and her daughter, and it was so incredible. Melanie brought us into our home. Kaya got to stay with her best friend Olivia. I got a new fun coffee cup for my coffee chats. Good moms say bad words. And it was really cool. And I wonder if any women have had this experience. Stupid connection. I was staying in my friend's home for, I think we were there for like 4 or 5 days. And it's so easy to compare. It's so easy to compare as a woman and to look at what other women are doing in our lives and maybe start even just for a second, like judge ourselves for not being enough, or judge ourselves for not doing it that way. And so my friend, she is one of these women who is so organized. She is so organized. There's like very little to no clutter in her home. She always looks amazing. She's always like hair and makeup, and somehow she just does it seamlessly with juggling her kids, their homeschooling, running this incredible company, and she just does it. And so it could be so easy for me to sit there. I mean, it definitely came up in multiple scenarios at multiple times. Like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why don't I dress nicer all the time? Why does my house have little piles everywhere? But here's where this practice that I talked to at the beginning, create an awareness, is so important and powerful. Because the reality is, we are all vastly different, and we're supposed to be. And as women, having a variety of friendships that, being around women who have different strengths than we have is what makes life not only interesting, but it's how we can grow and have the opportunity to learn from others, in making subtle changes if we want in our lives. But this is where the awareness piece becomes really important and powerful. It's in those moments where maybe we are self-criticizing, we are comparing, we are judging, our most negative thoughts are coming up. It allows us this second to pause and check in and ask, what works for me? Because maybe although I can highly respect my friend's lifestyle and life choices for her family, and I can be in awe as I watch it all play out because it's so beautiful, and feel like I'm not enough for not doing the same things, when I create that moment for pause and check-in, I can quickly get pulled out of that most negative thought and realize parts of this work for me and parts of it don't, and that's okay. And I don't know if you've experienced this as a woman, but for so long in my life, when I had those feelings, especially about friends, them because they weren't, you're not supposed to feel those things. When now what is I've switched that into an admiration and an ability to ask questions and get curious and ask for advice and support, and to take what works for me and get better with seeing, things that she's got nailed down that I don't in my life. And so what's really cool now when, those feelings come up of self-criticism or judgment or not enough, and maybe you've experienced this in regards to how someone else is raising their family, in regards to maybe there's another mama out there doing less screen time than you, and for a minute you're like, oh, that feels yuck, I'm just gonna stuff it. This allows you instead to actually ask questions. What are you doing when you have to work? How are you limiting screen time while you're juggling all these things? It gives us the opportunity for collaboration and to work together and to support one another. And this is how we create that village that we're constantly told that we need as women, but doesn't seem to exist anywhere. This is how we create it. And so I was so inspired by my time in my friend's house because, like I said, she's really organized. That is just not, when I have a minute, that is just not where my mind goes to. I like to create. It's not something I learned growing up in my home. And so I got to pick her brain, and I came home and like was really inspired to organize my pantry. I'm going to organize my closet. She told me this great book to get. And, you know, again, this is how we win, and this is how we work together as women. And so, you know, my message for you in all of this is a reminder in the age of external information to remember to check in. Again, especially for the mamas at this time at the beginning of the school year, when people are maybe, you know, back in the day when like we didn't want to do a ton of after schools for our kids. I was watching everyone sign their kids up for every sports and every activity and every weekend commitment. And I was like, oh my God, am I doing something wrong? Am I missing something? And, you know, this check-in, this flex, this exercise gave me the opportunity to ask myself questions of whether or not that actually worked for our family. And we don't have to do it the way that everyone else is doing it to be doing it right. And the more you continue to pause with each decision, and instead of to react out of your old story or out of the external influences or out of those voices in your head that aren't your own, that are from mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, what you should do, what you're supposed to do, to instead make a choice. The more we flex this muscle of going internal, shutting off the external noise that we are surrounded by, asking what works for us, and making decisions based on that. The louder that voice gets, the easier it is to make decisions, the more in alignment you will feel, the more secure you will feel for doing it your way and not everybody else's. And the more you'll be back and reconnected with your inner intuition, your wisdom, your gut feeling. I don't know how many of you women, especially that are mamas, you know, back when perhaps you had your first baby and you're figuring everything out. And the reality is, from a neurological perspective, when you first have babies, you are highly, highly, highly intuitive. There's a neural pruning process that where old circuits and connections kind of like die off that we no longer need, and other ones that increase our intuition get really strong. Think about this. You literally have to be able to read a baby's body language and facial gestures in order to know what they need. You have to be highly intuitive. But yet it is probably one of the times in our life as moms where we judge ourselves the most, where we question our decisions the most, right? And so think about going back to that time. I know this happens for me a lot. There are things that did not feel right to me, but seemed like they were what I was supposed to do in raising our children, that when I did, I suffered for. Either it didn't work well in our family and the baby didn't sleep, or I felt like shit after because I second guessed and then I did something out of obligation or should instead of what resonated. I didn't feel that my baby was safe in the care of someone else, and I didn't listen to my gut, and so I worried that entire time. And so looking back, you know, those are times where I would have appreciated this information. I would have appreciated someone pointing out to me and reminding me to go in, to strengthen the muscle of gut check, of intuition, of wisdom. Again, these are all things that I share in all my resources. This is, you know, the brainwave guides and all the things like that. These are really incredible, powerful tools for strengthening this voice again, for getting that gut check louder if you're someone who's gotten disconnected with it. This is how we literally tap back into the neuroscience behind it. This is how we start to live cyclically as women. We live in alignment with our rhythm, which is a daily switch. We go through different, I like to call them like gears throughout the day, but when we're constantly just pushing in one gear, go, 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 it's very hard to hear this inner voice and wisdom. And so by tapping into like the brainwave guide that I offer online is super powerful if you want to go deeper. But simply this, you know, if you've spent time listening to this and you don't have time to grab another resource, or you don't want to, or whatever, just let this little chat be your reminder in the age of doing. In the age of so much external information, there is no shortage of external information. Let this be your reminder that everything you need is here. You are your greatest teacher. You are your greatest mentor. You are your greatest guru. Think about some of your favorite friendships and relationships in your life, and perhaps the women or mentors who have given you the greatest advice. I would bet if you looked back, those people were actually just really good at creating space for you to hear your own. You have all the answers. And as women, it is time for us to get back to the ability to hear them again. We are inundated with information, and it's time to quiet that and get this louder. And that is a muscle that we can flex every day. As I wrap this up, I just want to say what I said at the beginning. Practice this with low-hanging fruit. Start to tap into how many decisions you make in a day. Big ones, small ones. Friday, my kids asked me at school pickup to stop at Cielito's, this really fun, super clean, like popsicle place that they love to go to. Here's an example. Here's a decision. Some decisions are really easy. Some decisions are really clear. This was a decision that they asked, that it wasn't in our schedule for the day. It wasn't in the plan. They hopped in the car. They all asked. They were all super excited. I did not want to go. I knew if we went, we would get stuck in horrible Friday Miami traffic. Hey, Craig. I did not listen. I regretted it later. An hour and a half later, we were home. Listen to that gut feeling. And these are the moments to practice. And when you don't listen, like I didn't on Friday, and you end up paying for it, you didn't fail. You never fail. You are constantly practicing. And as long as you're practicing and you are creating an awareness, you are laying down the tracks in your neurochemistry to forging a path of least resistance in the choices that work for you. This is a new practice for so many of us. So at the beginning, it feels weird and it feels foreign. And I want to say this 100 times. You are practicing. You are not going for perfection. I live this. I teach this. I use it every day. And every single day, there are still at least a dozen decisions that I fail at. I'm not failing. I just choose the old path. But here's the thing. When I do it, I know what I'm doing. When I told the kids, yes, we'll go to Cielito's, I felt it. I knew in my heart and my gut that it wasn't right. I was fully aware of what was happening, but I chose it anyway. And you win when you're aware. That's it. It gives you permission to fail. It gives you permission to practice. It gives you permission to not show up perfectly, because it's time for us to start being more okay with that. Because I don't know about you, but I have tried other new routines and new habits. And when life happens and it doesn't fit in the container of what whoever taught me it was supposed to look like, it's so easy to quit. It's so easy to think there's something wrong with me. I just can't do it right. I'm not meant for this, and to quit. This does not work that way. You continue to practice. You continue to flex that muscle, and you continue to be aware and pay attention to what you're doing and the choices you're making. And continue to ask yourself, are these based on what someone else wants, or are these based on what I want? And then watch how it feels after the decision is made. And every time you do that, this flex gets stronger. And every time you do that, you start to stand up for what you believe in and what's important to you and what's important to your family, and you quiet everything else. And now more than ever is so important to do this, because it has gotten so loud out there. It has gotten so filtered and so easy to look and think that everyone's doing it perfectly and you're not, and there's something wrong with you. And there is not something wrong with you. Everything is right with you. So I hope this inspired you to tap back into you. I hope that in listening to this, you know there's not another to-do for you to do. There's not another gadget for you to go out and get. This is about quieting and going in. This is about doing less. This is about not becoming someone else, but coming home to who you truly are. And this is how we win as women. All right, love you guys. Good to be back. I'll see you next Monday for Coffee Chat.